a first week of spring practice, which means plenty of overreactions and hype already starting to get out. Michigan had its pro day as well. I think we'll save a lot of that draft talk for another day. I will say the conversation around JJ McCarthy, I knew the man was going to be polarizing, but oh my God, it's just crazy. This seems to happen every year, and it's getting like more and more out of control. The stuff that CJ Stroud went through last year, I mean, some of it was like borderline cruel, right? Like, and all these, I'm a draft, like, what am I looking for? I'm obsessed with draft stuff. I love mock drafts. I love all the conversation around it, and I'm starting to get really sick of it. Like, I don't know, like, what teams you think are going to pick who and like what prospect is intriguing, but now it's become this like, I'm going to predict whether somebody is going to succeed or fail, and I have super hot takes about it. And when I'm wrong, the next year it won't matter. I'm just going to keep doing it, and it's annoying the hell out of me. But anyway, Michigan was kind of the center of the football world with the pro day and all the teams coming in. And then obviously we had some player access today, some comments from that, but let's get into it. So the spring game, kind of interesting. I thought in the past it's been on Big Ten Network. Sometimes it's been on delay. Sometimes it hasn't been televised at all.
Yeah.
This year it's going to be on Fox, April 20th this year at noon, broadcast on Fox with Joel Klatt in attendance. Ohio State is the week before. They're also going to be broadcast on Fox. This is part of the money being invested in the Big Ten by these networks and the eyes and the access that we're getting. So unfortunately, we'll probably have some games on Peacock as well, but very interesting. The spring game at the end of, or not the end, but third week of April, they're going to be broadcast on Fox. That was pretty cool. So Josh, first guy I wanted to get into, the conversation around Donovan Edwards has already kind of shifted, I think, frankly, since before the Washington game, where he was very candid about some of the mental obstacles he faced last year, coming back from his injury and some of those early struggles. And then coming into this offseason too, once he decided to return and kind of embrace this leadership role, we've just been talking about Edwards a little bit differently. And now we find out the dude has completely embraced this adversity and took on the challenge. He's added 14 pounds of muscle, just absolutely jacked. His mind seems to be in the right place. He's becoming more of a leader. His body's in a great place. Really excited about the trajectory of Donovan Edwards in this senior season.
Yeah, I think, I mean, even, Kirk Campbell hinted at it. When did he speak to the media? Like 2 weeks ago, a week ago, something like that. He mentioned early that, we've seen Donovan around all the time. He looks great. He looks football ready. And just seeing him today, you could tell that there was some significant bulk added to his frame. I mean, the guy looks big. He looks significantly bigger, and that's going to bode well because, he's not going to be a 30 carry back, but he needs, to be a guy that can carry a little bit more of the load and can absorb some hits. I think that's one of his, biggest knocks is that he's really, he's susceptible to going down at first contact, and, adding 14 pounds of muscle or just 14 pounds. I don't know if it's all muscle, but just adding 14 pounds to his frame.
Gave him a lot of credit there, didn't I?
Yeah. I mean, it's all semantics anyway, but, adding that kind of mass to his frame, goes a long way in that regard. A lot of it too is, as you said, the mental aspect of, trying to find the right holes and hitting the holes and stuff like that. But, I think a lot of people kind of discounted how much missing the spring kind of impacted him. And I guess I'm probably victim of that too. I was kind of thinking, it's Blake and Donovan. It's fine. They can afford to miss a spring, but it does mess with your momentum a little bit. And we kind of saw that with Blake too, that, he was lagging behind a little bit at the beginning of the year and then hit his stride. I think it just took Donovan a little bit longer to do that. And, Blake had his knee thing, but Donovan had multiple things. So it's not just a foot issue. There was a couple other issues as well. So, you saw that stride being hit around Penn State, and really it couldn't have been at a better time. You can talk about his struggles all you want, but when it mattered the most, Donovan Edwards was there. I mentioned Penn State, obviously the Washington game. So yeah, I think, so far in camp, I haven't really heard much about him in terms of just him doing, Donovan Edwards things. So that's good. I'm not really too concerned about what Donovan Edwards does in spring. I'm more concerned about the depth behind him. Specifically Kalel Mullings and Ben Hall and Tavi Dunlap and those guys. So, obviously early Friday was the first day of pads. There wasn't any hitting. So that'll start soon. And that's when really I start to take a lot of stock into what you hear, because, a lot of these non-hitting, non-padded practices tend to sway heavily towards the offense because, the defense can't hit. So therefore you can't really shut down much. So, yeah, I mean, it's good to see that, there's a plan for Donovan, and he's really, embracing the struggles. It's something that he's really taken to heart, and I'll be really curious to see how he works with Tony Alford and how he kind of molds him moving forward. And again, that goes for the rest of the guys on the roster too. So, yeah, we'll kind of see. I mean, I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about Donovan as spring goes on, but even if there's nothing out there that you hear about him, I mean, the fact that he's put on weight and looks good and is healthy, I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, it seems like he's rebounded really well from what was a tough season for him. Obviously, he finished well with the two long touchdowns in the national championship game, but he's rebounded well. He's put on weight, like you guys said. Well, something that he talked about today that interested me was he talked about how Kalel Mullings has a little bit of Hassan Haskins in him, and Ben Hall has a little bit of Blake Corum, and Cole Cabana has a little bit of Edwards said himself. And I think that's really, if you're a Michigan fan, it's really encouraging knowing that there's depth beyond Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mullings. And uh, obviously, everyone expects Edwards to, have a bounce back season, and Mullings will obviously carry some of the workload too. But knowing that you have the three guys behind both of them, that Edwards talked about having a little bit of each of the last three Michigan running backs is definitely encouraging, to say the least.
Donovan's just a guy I didn't like. When I say didn't like, I felt bad almost for where he was towards the end of last year, because anyone who's been around him or, been in one of those press conferences or even just watched videos with him know just what an interesting spirit Donovan Edwards is, right? And just a character and the aura around him. And he just seems more like himself, right? And just more comfortable. And yeah, he's going to have a huge role no matter what. We've talked about, like you said, Brock, Mullings, the Haskins comparisons, and him maybe being the guy that gets more carries would not shock me. Ben Hall last year, that was the thing that really stuck out. Yes, it's a spring game. Yes, it's a complete overreaction. But his instincts and some of those lateral cuts and the ability to still move forward even when he's making those moves, very Corum-esque, right? I agree with that completely. So this is a room that is a chance to be really, really good. A lot of guys do a lot of different things. You've got good depth there. But obviously, the better Donovan Edwards feels and is playing, the better Michigan's going to be. So, and again, he's embracing that leadership role. We've talked about that too. I think, yes, talent has to be replaced and depth is a concern, but leadership might be the biggest void right now, just needing people to step up. So the QB battle obviously was going to be a story no matter what, will continue to be a story until a starter is named, whenever that ends up being. Kirk Campbell, I got a chuckle out of it, but I guess it kind of made sense going into day one. Said, look, there's 5 QBs. There isn't really any way to separate them. So we're literally going by age and then alphabetical order for day one in terms of a depth chart. Early on, though, I don't think it's a shock to see the name getting the most hype is Alex Orji. He's been front and center in a lot of the Michigan media things, hanging out with the players. Jack Tuttle's dealing with some lingering injury stuff too. That's kind of bringing him back from camp slowly. But those two have kind of felt like the most common names up there. Jaden Davis continues to get a lot of praise about how he's looking coming into his freshman year. Obviously, he's been with the team since the Rose Bowl, doing drills as well. But coming into this, I've told people, look, Michigan took J.J. McCarthy, the quarterback that Jim Harbaugh said is the best in Michigan football program history, who is about to be a top 5 pick, potentially. They took him off the field against Ohio State, Alabama, and Washington to allow Alex Orji to come onto the field. That's how much they trust him, and that's how much they think he can help the team win. If Jack Tuttle or someone else is hypothetically the starting quarterback for this year, Alex Orji's not staying on the sideline. We're probably looking at some sort of 2-quarterback system, right? Like, just realistically. So more and more, this is starting to feel like Alex Orji's job to lose, in my opinion. We're going to have overreactions in this show, just so you guys know. That's the point of Spring Intel, is to overreact. But look, we talked about, we don't want somebody to win this job by default. And I like that they're saying good things about Orji. I like that Jaden Davis is looking good as a freshman. I don't know where he's going to fall in that pecking order. And then obviously you still have Davis Warren and Jaden Denegal involved as well. But Josh, you've obviously talked to some folks that had eyeballs on practice this week, and it feels like the Orji hype's going to be a real thing throughout spring.
Yeah, I mean, again, as we just talked about, I take very little stock into the last week. But if there was a pecking order, I'd say right now, in terms of, how good of a week they had, I would say Orji is number 1. Davis Warren probably 2, and not far behind is Jaden Davis, and then there's Denegal. Denegal, from what I was told from multiple people, didn't have that great of a week. But again, it's so insignificant right now that I'm not worried about it.
Very fluid, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for all we know, Orji could have a horrible week next week, and that totally flips things on its head. But I think the most interesting thing is that Jaden Davis continues to stack good days. I think that's probably the best case scenario for Michigan right now because I think Davis has the highest ceiling out of all of those quarterbacks on the roster personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a little unfair for me to say that in terms of comparing it with Orji, because we haven't really seen much, but I do think Davis has the highest ceiling out of all of them. And I think having a guy like that, getting at least be in a position, if he continues to stack these days up, to be in a position to be a factor, I think that's a pretty good deal for Michigan. And
especially long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, long term, absolutely. So, I was kind of told that as long as the quarterback play is good, Michigan's going to be in a position to contend all year. And I don't disagree with that take at all. I think they've got the pieces on defense. The offense, I think, they're still in the position of figuring it out. But if they've got a guy that can take care of the football and lead the team in scoring drives, I think they'll be just fine. So, you're likely coming out of the first week looking at Orji probably on top of the depth chart. But again, that's written in pencil and, with the eraser right by it. I mean, that stuff changes every day, and it's not anything even worth looking into right now. And I honestly, even at the end of spring, I'm not even going to be able to declare that there's going to be a clear starter. And I don't think Michigan really wants to do that either. So
I think narrowing down to 2 to 3 guys is probable going into the summer. But for competition's sake, I don't think you want to name a starter by the end of spring.
No, and I mentioned this on the boards in the discussion. Is like, I don't think really Michigan wants a clear cut starter. No. I think they want it to be so close that everyone has been really good that
Agree.
That they have to kind of figure it out. I think if they have like 1 or 2, then then they might have to make a decision either way. But Yeah, I mean, as long as the guy's behind, a guy like Orgy, and obviously Tuttle hasn't practiced much either. He's still dealing with his shoulder issues, so he'll be practicing at some point in the spring, but I'm not really sure when. I just know it's soon enough. So, yeah, I mean, again, I'm not gonna hype up the quarterback battle right now and say, this is someone's job to lose. It's been literally a week. One guy had a better week than the other, in terms of Orgy versus Donegal. And again, that stuff changes. So, if that continues, if you see a trend, then yeah, you can start looking into it. But, I mean, the first week, I understand people are hungry for information and they want to talk about anything not bad in terms of the off the field stuff. So yeah, we'll kind of see what happens.
Brock,
fun
give me the overreaction I'm looking for here, please.
The overreaction you're looking for?
I'm just kidding. Tell me what you think.
Oh, well,
there's nothing I love more than when I tee Josh up and he's like, yeah, no.
I liked what Max and Finn said in the comments about it's going to be Orgy and they sprinkle in Jaden Davis more and more. That'd be interesting to me. That'd almost be like in 2021 when Cade McNamara was the starter and JJ McCarthy got plugged in a few plays here and there just to kind of change things up, give the defense a different look. I could see that happening. Alex Orgy is the starter, but Jaden Davis is so talented to the point where you just can't let him sit on the bench the entire game, So I'd be interested to see how that would play out. But yeah, Trevor, we talked about it last week, how if somehow by late August, by the time late August rolls around, if Jaden Davis is your starter, you have to feel good if you're a Michigan fan, knowing that the freshman beat out all the older, more experienced guys. You have to feel like he's developed enough to a point where the staff is comfortable starting him, So very, very interested to see what happens there. But yeah, I could definitely see Orgy being the starter and Jaden Davis playing, I don't know, 3 to 5 snaps a game.
That Davis is a very interesting part of this, whether he stays in the starter conversation or not, because I think regardless of how this competition goes this year, if you had to ask me to make a bet who the starting quarterback is in 25, I'm saying Jaden Davis, right? Your average fan made a good point. I think that, Davis has the highest floor. Throughout this process of his recruitment, and obviously it's no secret he was dropping in the rankings towards the end there, and then he'd go and do these Elite 11 things, and anytime it was like football, not just shorts, but like football, he excelled. But anyway, what I've said throughout is Davis is really good at the things that are hard to teach in the intangibles, and I think that brings his floor up and puts him at an interesting spot in terms of the difficult throws and then high football IQ and leadership, right? That said, I don't think the high ceiling is what you need this year necessarily. Like Josh said, with the defense and the running game and whatever else. Oh, okay. Are we going to do that?
Yeah, we're going to have to do that.
Are you serious? All right, hold on.
Wow.
Yeah, that's fun. Okay. Somebody asked a question, Josh, when got info, and here we are. So anyway, yeah, like Josh said, it's early in this battle. And sometimes there's smoke and mirrors with hyping guys up and not hyping guys up or whatever it might be. But the thing that sticks out to me with Orgy again is the fact that they were already putting him on the field last year. So big question mark about this team coming into this year, and some early hype already. Not a shock. The wide receivers or pass catchers, including Colston Loveland in this group. Who's gonna be wide receiver one? Who's gonna step up in that? Tyler Morris got some freak show or freakish athlete label early in camp. Not new. He's been getting that tag since he arrived in Ann Arbor, coming back from his injury, obviously. Samaj Morgan, freshman breakout star last year. looking to take a step up, and Colston Loveland just continuing to look like the best tight end in college football. Those are your top three. We obviously had news this week as well when the Michigan roster was released and Carmelo English was notably absent. Josh was able to confirm he is no longer with the program. So that wide receiver room that was already thin, getting even thinner. So I think we know how we feel about some of the guys at the top in the elite talent, but the depth behind them continues to be a concern.
Yeah, I'll go since Josh, I know you're working on stuff. Here's an overreaction for you, Trevor.
Yes.
I'll overreact and say that wide receiver 1 is currently not on the roster.
Ooh.
I think Michigan gets someone big from the portal. I don't know who it's going to be, but I'd say wide receiver 1 is not on the roster. You look at then Tyler Morris and Samaj Morgan as kind of the wide receiver 2 and 3. Obviously, Loveland's in there too. Loveland might lead the team in receiving no matter what, no matter who Michigan brings in from the portal or doesn't bring in. Loveland might still be the leading receiver, but I do think in terms of wide receivers, Michigan will get its wide receiver 1 from the portal.
Yeah, Colston Loveland was wide receiver 2 last year, arguably, depending on how you want to rank it, receptions, yards, touchdowns, whatever, combination of the three. But just put in perspective here, Roman Wilson, obviously, if I asked you if he had a good year, you'd say he had a great year, right? 48 receptions, 789 yards, and then obviously the 12 touchdowns. Colston Loveland was right there, 45 receptions, 649 yards, only the 4 touchdowns. And we talked about how close that year relates to Jake Butt's 2016 season. So the idea that was his sophomore year, he's coming into a junior year where AJ Barner's not here. I do think Marlon Klein, Josh, is somebody that is tagged as the obvious tight end 2 coming in. Josh Beetham, former walk-on, is a guy that's still continuing to make noise as well. And then you've got a bunch of young dudes. Brady Prescorn, obviously, coming in as a freshman too. So there's a lot of tight ends there. But Loveland, I think he played wide receiver until late junior year, even senior year, just because he literally just grew into a tight end. So this is one of those wide receiver trapped in a tight end's body kind of thing, right? Like a Kyle Pitts kind of guy. Yeah. So I'm with you. I think he could arguably be wide receiver 1 no matter what. In terms of the portal, we've talked about this. We don't know who's going to jump in later. Right now, a guy I really like that I'm surprised there hasn't been a lot of smoke is Kyle Ford. It's a former 5-star recruit that Michigan was in on, ended up going to USC, transferred to UCLA, has not met the expectations in terms of, production, but that's a guy that just makes a lot of sense in this offense. You've recruited in the past, big body, outside receiver. And then, at this point, they might be targeting smaller guys too. I don't know if it even necessarily matters. Brock, we've talked about the big body receiver so much, but behind Morris and Moore, you've got, I keep getting these M names mixed up so much. I said Moore. Morris and Morgan, you've got Moore. There we go. So Fred Moore is a name there that people are expecting to take a leap up. But otherwise, you're relying on freshmen maybe. Marion Stewart coming in.
Yeah.
And having Channing Goodwin. I know the Peyton O'Leary, height machine might be there as well. But yeah, they might add 2 guys in the portal at this point. So I'm with you. That's the kind of overreaction hot take I've been looking for.
Yeah, they're gonna need some work there for sure.
The offensive line for a group that is replacing 5 starters, there's not really a ton of questions right now. I think we have a pretty good idea of how that depth chart is already shaking out. I think the biggest question we had was arguably between left and right. The 2 guards, we expected, obviously, Giovanni Helhadi, who has been fantastic in limited duty, was a guy we thought would start last year, but Trevor Keegan and Zach Zinter both return. His play has been at left guard. Josh Preeb, who transferred from Northwestern, guy with a lot of experience, played at left guard. Early practice, this is real early, like Josh said. I'm sure they're going to move dudes around a ton. But early, we saw Preeb at left guard, Helhadi at right. And then the tackle spots, obviously, Miles Hinton is a guy the staff really believes in and thinks something's just got to click. he's got an elite level. It's just been inconsistency for him. They think he can be one of the best tackles in football if he just clicks and he gets that consistent factor. Sounds like he's been getting the work at left, while Andrew Gentry, another former top 100 recruit, took a couple of years off for a mission trip. He's coming into year 3. That's a 24-year-old man. And then you start to think about this entire offensive line for being new guys. They're all old and very large and in incredible shape. And then Greg Crippen, who I think is going to be a captain, is just the Michigan man story, right? He waited. They brought Olo in over him. They brought Drake Nugent in over him. He, early signs, looks really good, has embraced his leadership role as well. Just kind of a cool story between him and El Hadi waiting their turns. But Josh, that's kind of where we're looking at with the depth chart right now. Do you think we're going to see a lot of movement, or do you think that is this maybe settling in a little easier than we expected?
Maybe. Probably a little too early to tell, but I mean, I think for the most part, you have a general outline of what the offensive line is going to look like. I think, out of all of those guys, I think Greg Crippen's having the best spring so far. Again, 1 week, I know, but I think you've got the general outline. Excuse me. You've got the interior guys mostly figured out. I mean, you can start from the middle on out. Crippen, I know El Hadi didn't practice last week on the Friday. I don't know why. I don't think no one really seemed that concerned that he wasn't practicing.
You're going to see that a lot, especially in spring. Anything light, they're going to.
I mean, there's always little, muscle tweaks and all that stuff as they get back into football shape, because no one's really doing football stuff in the off season. And so, you saw guys like Preeb step in there and also have a really good week. Jeff Percy played a little bit of left. Even a guy like in who played in El Hadi's absence, Nathan Afobe, he also had a really good week. We're told that he looks the part physically. I don't know if he would be the guy if not El Hadi, but I think I think there's at least a general blueprint of who they want there and who they hope steps up. Like Miles Hinton, you can probably write him in Penn in the starting lineup, and I think he's looked really well, really good. He's moving around well. I think the problem a little bit with him last year is that he was banged up for most of the year, and you have Ladarius Henderson there too, so that's just what it is. But again, Preeb, another guy that you can pretty much write in Penn. Crippen, Penn, El Hadi, Penn. So now you're kind of figuring out what you do with Andrew Gentry, I think, is the big, I wouldn't say question mark. I don't think question mark is the right description there. I think he's the more of the unknown. Is he ready to play at a big time level? And again, looks the part. Can you trust him in a full starting role? And we'll obviously find out as spring goes on and as we get into fall camp. But I think Andrew Gentry is probably the one where there's maybe more of a true battle going on there. I wouldn't say it's a full blown like 1v1 guy, but I think it's Gentry's job to lose at this point. And I don't think it's a bad thing if he loses it. It just means that someone else played better. You've got choices there. You're fortunately you can play Percy at guard. You can also play Percy at tackle too. So it's just what Michigan has done really well is having these guys be versatile. So so I think a lot of it is just kind of letting these guys settle in and just maintain these top spots and stay healthy and kind of get through the spring and see where you're at. But, Josh Preeb is probably going to be another excellent addition through the portal. Another guy, Jayshawn Barham, we're going to talk about here soon, another excellent addition in the portal. So, and just outside, I know you mentioned the portal earlier with the wide receivers. Yeah, I don't think they're done adding, not necessarily to the offensive line or linebackers, but this was, as we were saying, and especially now with Rod Moore hurt, this is what the spring was for, to look at what you have and then adjust from there to get your needs. So, does Michigan go to the portal for safety now? I don't know. That's obviously a to be determined type of thing. Wide receiver, yeah, they could probably afford to add a guy, especially because you lose Carmelo English. You don't have much depth there, so you could probably afford to add They don't necessarily need a bigger guy. A bigger guy would be helpful, but they don't really throw the field the home run shot very often. But it all depends on who enters the portal too. And I know we kind of say, well, it's kind of early, it's kind of late in the year for some big name guys to hit the portal, but with NIL and stuff these days, anything can happen, and you just don't know what's going to happen in terms of job statuses elsewhere. Guys who are maybe promised a job and didn't get it, and now they want to go find a job elsewhere. That's also another possibility. So yeah, there's still a lot of unanswered questions even after spring's done. I mean, I refuse to believe like this roster is the final form of Michigan football this year. I mean, there's just so much time between now and the season starts. Anything can happen. Any addition can happen. So, to go back to the offensive line, do I think this is what that starting offensive line is going to look like? The El Hadi, the Crippen, Miles Hinton, all those guys, yeah, probably. And I think Michigan will be just fine. But yeah, it all just depends on, their needs, what they have, and kind of who enters the portal there too, if there's a fit. So, it's going to be an interesting time for sure. And yeah, as I said, I don't think this is the final form of Michigan's roster for this year. I don't think so at all.
Yeah, you're looking at a potential starting offensive line of all seniors, and that'd be the second year in a row, if I'm not mistaken, which is unheard of. That's unbelievable. 2 consecutive years of all seniors on the offensive line,
especially the transfer portal era. Yeah,
it's crazy. Right. And if Gentry happens to beat a guy out, then okay, he's a junior, but he's, like you've mentioned, Trevor, he's 24 years old. So last week when it was just me and Trevor on, I quickly corrected myself when I said that the offensive line was young. They're not young. They're actually probably one of the oldest ones in the country.
Yeah.
But just inexperienced. We know these guys are very, very old. They've been in the program a while. Josh, you talked about Greg Crippen, or Trevor, whoever it was, talked about Greg Crippen waiting his turn, El Hadi waiting his turn. Yeah. And these guys have waited for years. And here they are. It's their time to shine, and I'm expecting big things from the offensive line. It'll take some time to gel. We'll see what happens at tackles because, like you said, Josh, Preeb, Crippen, El Hadi are basically all locks. I think we all agree on that at this point in the spring. So we'll see. We'll see what happens at tackle, but I expect this offensive line to be pretty good in 2024.
Yeah, I think the continuity piece is a big deal. Last year we saw them let the competition kind of bleed into the season and in some ways hurt them, right? With an all new starters, these guys, the sooner, when the quarterback battle, I think the longer that competition goes, the better, because you're pushing these guys. The offensive line has been in a competitive environment for years, right? So at this point, once you've got your guys, I think the sooner you can get the ones to stay together and really start to click is the better. Good to hear Afobe's name come up. Amir Herring's another guard as well. So Ottawa Traveler, Raheem Anderson's another guy that's kind of been waiting his turn. So when you think about depth and that sixth offensive lineman that they like to do so much, they're in a good spot. And it's easy to say they have inexperience, but hey, Preeb's a 2-year starter. Miles Hinton 2.5 technically. And then these other guys have been in this system learning from the Keegans, the Zinters, the Olus, the Nugents, right? could be worse. Let's put it that way, right? And yeah, I wouldn't be shocked, like Josh said, if they do continue to look in the portal when it comes to that.
And real quick, I want to answer your average fans question here.
Yeah.
They only added Wallace
Post
spring, but this year is completely different from last year. So I mean, maybe they
one
do
year.
have,
The 1 year rule. I was just gonna say the 1 year rule is gone for one. So anyone who transferred the previous year can still transfer again. You had a lot of late coaching staff changes this year too. That some guys, it sounds like potentially stuck because they had no choice from an enrollment standpoint too.
Right.
But,
yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe they, once April, I forget, was it April 15th or something like that when the window opens? I mean, maybe they add another guy in July or whenever they added Wallace. I think it was like June.
Yeah, I think it was late June.
Yeah, so you never know. I mean, grad transfers might be the way to go because you've got 1 year fillers where I mean, and again, I don't even want to hypothesize what they're going to do with Rod Moore. I mean, that's such a devastating loss. Like I can't begin to even describe how much of a big loss that is for Michigan. That you really can't fill that spot. So like, yeah, it's so devastating that you're basically like, it's almost to the point where he was almost basically gone with everyone else to the NFL. Even like it's like he never even announced that he came back. It's
except him coming back arguably cost you Sap.
Yeah, which that's the way she goes.
Your average fan said, "Let's pull a Proctor here."
Yeah, right. I don't know what you do. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
anyone just joining, Josh was able to confirm Rod Moore has suffered a lower leg injury of the long-term sort. We haven't really speculated on, ACL, MCL, meniscus, any of that, but it does sound like an injury that's going to hold him out potentially for a very long time. So yeah, you feel for him, and obviously from a team standpoint, bummer. An exciting guy. You brought him up earlier, coming into the defense. A transfer they did add along with Preeb early on in the season, Jayshawn Barham from Maryland. This is a 2-year starter coming into his junior year. Seemed very, very likely Junior Colson was going to leave, so he was an obvious replacement there. And so far, filling in, not shocking at all. Looks like he's filling in pretty well at that Mike linebacker role. I've said a bunch. I'm always biased to somebody I've watched do really well against Michigan. So Barham was the only player not on Bowling Green to intercept JJ McCarthy last year. So look, that's a big physical linebacker that gets around, impacts the run game, can drop back in coverage. Not shocking to hear he's fitting in early.
Yeah, I mean, if you want some Kool-Aid, I got some Kool-Aid from
Give me Kool-Aid.
Jayshawn Barham. I had one person that was at the practices tell me that there would be zero drop-off between Jayshawn Barham and Junior Colson, which, yeah, it's Kool-Aid, but at the same time, I can see that, though. We've seen
Barham play.
Barham is a very good linebacker. We've seen him play before. I mean, we've seen him pick off JJ, but, is that a bit of a stretch? I don't think it's that much of a stretch. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's a little Kool-Aid. Yeah, chug it. Go ahead. That's fine. But, I don't think it's all that insane to say. I really don't. But I think ideally, again, it all just comes down to building depth. I mean, that's why Michigan was, I would not be surprised if Junior Colson is the first linebacker taken off the board in whatever the third round. But I think as much as he was really good, I think the depth there also played into why he was so good. And yeah, he was injured. I mean, he played with 2 clubs on his hands. That guy is a warrior. I mean, that guy is tough as hell. He could play for me any day. If I had a team, he would be the first one out of a toughness standpoint I'd pick. But I think just from out of I don't know. I don't think Junior Colson to Mike Barrett to Ernest Hausman and Jayshawn Barham is that much of a step down, if any. I think Yeah, there's probably going to be a little drop off just because they're veteran guys and they know the defense really well. And yeah, Houseman played some last year and he was, he played well. But I think both of those guys, from a talent standpoint, you've got two really good linebackers, or I really don't think you're going to see much drop off there. I really don't. And so getting Barham, I think, is probably one of the more underrated moves Michigan made this offseason that I don't think a lot of people are going to be talking about right now. But once the fall comes around and you see him play, you're gonna start to see why this was such an important get for Michigan.
That's a bad looking dude.
Yeah, it is.
Like,
that's
a bad
running at you and giving you a spear shot. Yeah,
yeah, man.
Yeah,
no,
I'm interested to see how much they plan on rotating. I know we've talked about this a little bit already, but there's potential for there to be some pretty big depth or pretty deep depth at linebacker. You're looking at Jimmy Rolder coming back. He was banged up last year. Micah Pollard can rise. Jaden Hood, we heard, had a really, really big fall camp, and then kind of just we never saw it materialize in the season. You've got a lot of guys there, and I'm interested to see, obviously, Barham and Houseman are 1 and 2, and they'll be out there the majority of the time, but I'm interested to see how much can the younger guys develop and give Barham and Houseman, a break if they need it, and so that they're not out there playing every snap. I think late in the season, if I remember correctly, Colson and Barrett were out there literally the entire game. And so I'm interested to see what happens with the younger guys, how much they can develop to potentially spell Houseman and Barham if they need it.
Yeah, because this is a group that has been led by Barrett and Colson at a almost exclusive level, much more in 22, right? 23, like you said, Houseman did play, maybe not as much as people thought earlier on in the year, but I mean, it was basically Colson and Barrett show all through 22 and for a lot of 23. So
Thanks.
Sorry, that caught me off guard. Yeah, this is the deepest that room's been in a few years. Jaden Hood is such an interesting player to me because you're right. A lot of fall camp hype last year. Brian Jean-Marie, for those who don't know, recruited Jaden Hood to Michigan.
Junior Colson too,
yeah. When he left for Tennessee, that was kind of a big deal, was trying to keep Colson and Hood here. So going to be interested to see if that clicks. Rolder, obviously, coming back from an injury last year, had a rough play against Ohio State, but he's a guy that could come in. We could get into all the young names, but you're right. We could see a lot more of those, and we probably will, because there's a good chance that, especially in this defense, Barham and Houseman potentially could be gone after next year. Would be shocked if one. I mean, it's real early projection. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but those are guys that have potential, have the kind of years where looking to the NFL wouldn't be a big deal. So I thought Barham was, as soon as he entered the portal, I was like, yes, please. Right? Just the way he played, Big Ten linebacker, just such a perfect addition in replacing Colson. But I'm with you. I'm excited to see the depth develop there. I love what you have at the top with him and Houseman. I think that's a great duo. And again, another position where you're replacing all of your starters and you're like, not really concerned about it, right? So.